Well, good morning and welcome to the Blackbar podcast.
Oh my
I guess it's not quite morning now.
It's been so long.
Yeah. I was gonna say Happy New Year, but it's already halfway through January, right?
It still counts.
It's more Happy Blackbar podcast to this new year.
Happy Blackbar New Year.
It's almost 2/3 of the way through January already. Good night.
I know,
but it makes sense that the Blackbar New Year is slightly delayed based upon this, because we took time to be healthy. That's all. No need to be upset about that. Blackbar New Year. Wait till next year. We'll be even better.
One of our topics today is actually one of the reasons why we didn't have our podcast back on January 5th. Caleb got an amazing opportunity to go be with Passion Conference, and he's going to share with us some of the things he learned there about how to make sermon clips according to Passion. And then our other topic, we're going to be doing some things talking about how some format changes would be happening with the podcast. But Zach, Caleb, how are you guys doing this morning?
Good. It's snowing outside, and I love snow, and it's just such a good feeling. Like, if I could have my window open right now and it wouldn't negatively impact lighting, I would be looking out at a beautiful condominium covered in snow.
I feel like that is such a privileged Pennsylvania perspective right now, because I'm looking outside at snow as well, and it's been basically 0 degrees all week, and everything is completely frozen solid. I can't open my front door right now because there's ice just covering the entire ground, and there's not enough clearance to push
Michiganders, man. Yeah, I feel like this year's been started with snow and sickness. Those are the two S's to take out 2024. So
on that note, in case I need to take a sip of my tea, that would be why I'm recovering from a slight illness. So if my voice sounds a little bit more deeper, a little bit more gravelly, that's why.
Oh, well.
We also did ask him to mute himself whenever he disgustingly sneezes or phlems all over the place. So it's a mix.
What about you Caleb? You just get some cough in there yourself.
That's the Caleb cough. He's always had the Caleb cough.
I do.
Now that you've heard me say it, you're never going to be able to unhear it. You're welcome. That being said, Caleb, why don't you take us into the first podcast conversation of the year? What do we got?
I really didn't want to cough right there, but I felt the need to cough, and I couldn't hold it back. So there it is again.
There it is. I told you.
The Caleb cough, I guess.
Yeah. So earlier this month, as Nick mentioned, I got the very exciting chance to go to Passion 2024, which, if you don't know, is a big old deal in the Christian music, preaching, pop culture world. It's down in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is a massive stadium. It's really big. I know how big it is because I couldn't find the staff entrance, and I had to walk around it 1.5 times.
I thought you were going to say the bathroom. I couldn't find the bathroom.
No.
I didn't poop the whole time I was at Passion.
Right, it was crazy. The stadium holds 80,000 people, and it was completely sold out. The floor was packed, and it's all of your favorite Passion artists. And I'll be the first to admit, I'll say it right here, I don't listen to music created by CCM artists ever. There was a point where I was making a piece of content for them. They asked for a specific clip of Cody Carnes, and I had to Google images what Cody Carnes looked like so I could correctly get the clip that they were asking for. And somebody behind me saw it, and they chuckled a little bit, and I never saw them again, but I'm still self-conscious about it. Regardless.
One day, Cody Carnes is going to walk up to you and be like, so, do you know who I am?
I literally right now, if you had a picture of 5 men, I could not identify Cody Carnes to you. I apologize.
Oh my god!
I could identify Carrie Joe. That might be the one that was there that I could. But it's not just music. It's also a bunch of speakers that were there, and it's basically just a ton of services. It's a 3-day event. 1 big service the first day, 5 services the second day with a little gap between each one, and then 1 big service the following day. Wow. And I was there invited specifically to be on the social team, which is part of the creative team, which was part of the door holders team. The door holders, I learned Passion lingo as I got there. Door door holders is their whole volunteer team. Then there's the creative team, which includes design and it includes video and it includes social and all of that kind of stuff. That team, to my best estimation, was probably 60 to 70 people that were there just for that event. That does not include, to be clear, because I understand a lot of churches have one department that handles both things. That is not production. That was a whole different room with probably an equivalent amount of people. I didn't have clearance to be in that room, so I didn't go in that room.
That makes sense.
It's probably because you didn't know Cody Carnes.
Yeah, it was probably. That was the question. They asked you, do you know this man? And then they let you in.
That's the only way you're allowed in.
Right. So I was specifically invited to be there on the social team, which was really exciting. I was told I was going to have 2 jobs. One was any animation that was required at all for anything. If they wanted stuff to move, I was the person they were going to call. The other thing I was asked to be a part was what the job title they had was called export. And the idea with export is that my job is to grab clips of the service. I call them sermon snippet. They called them talk clips of people preaching, occasionally some of worship as well. Take a good 60 to 90 second clip and have it ready for a reel, right? We've all seen these things hundreds of times on our feeds. The exciting part of that was the expectation and reminder of how many services there were. There were 6 services total over those 3 days. 7, 5 of them on the same day. Within 20 to 30 minutes of the service being completely over, the expectation I would have at least 4 to 5 clips that were cut, that were reframed for social, that were captioned and ready to be reviewed and posted within 30 minutes.
Jeez.
Which, if you've ever cut clips like that before, that's a wicked turnaround time. That is really fast. I mean, and when they told me that expectation ahead of time, I my heart sank for a little bit. Like, how on earth are we going to do that? They have some tricks. I learned some tricks at Passion, and I am here to share all of the secrets, except for what Cody Carnes looks like. I still don't know that.
So for context, Caleb, this is a very, very large team. Is this larger than like church teams that you've worked on that are fulfilling these same roles?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the social media team alone, specifically just them, was probably 12 to 15 people.
So this information that you're sharing today, what we've learned is like, for a big team, let's learn from a big production that knows what they're doing, right?
Right.
That's kind of.
I want to talk about specifically the systems that they were using, and then I want to talk about like how an average sized church might be able to execute a lot of the same ideas. So we'll just talk about Passion scale first.
Sure.
There were 2 main sort of systems that they had in place that made it possible for me to edit on the timeline that I did. And I will say, I don't think this is bragging, it's just the truth. I did not do 4 to 5 posts within 30 minutes of each service ending. I averaged about 15. And the big part of that was the systems that they had in place. The first thing was, as soon as I got there and started using it, it felt like I was using magic from the future. I still don't entirely understand how it was working. But they connected me to an Ethernet, thing that was connected to a NAS, a network attached storage. And it was a fast Ethernet connection. And they had a file of the recording of the live stream that was being downloaded onto that NAS. And they were using a special program. I asked a bunch of people before I finally figured out what this program was called. And it's called Movie Recorder. And the idea is with Movie Recorder, the sort of headline feature, they call it Edit While Ingest.
Jeez,
and the idea with Edit While Ingest is that I can open up a Premiere file totally normal. I didn't need any special software. I grabbed the file as soon as it started being recorded. I saw it like in the folder, and then I dragged it into Premiere. And when I first brought it in, it was like 10 seconds of video of probably whatever announcement slides were playing pre-service.
Sure.
And then if I waited 15 seconds, I could just grab the end of the clip and just drag it out. And it was always, 20 seconds behind live or so. But just as the service went on, I could just continue dragging it out into the future.
How in the world does that work?
I have no idea. It felt magical.
I bet.
It was crazy. It was also set up to like the video file had time code built in. So I was able to set my Premiere project file to the time code of the thing. And they used real live time of day for their time code for everything across the entire board.
Well,
the big reason they talked about that is that if there is a delay 5 minutes one way or the other, it doesn't matter. We're all working on the same time of the day, right?
Sure.
So I had the time code in place. I was able to extend out the thing, and I could edit. I was literally asked to get cuts of worship songs. Like, hey, can you get me that chorus real quick? I would have cuts of a chorus exported, ready for review before they finished playing the song. I could hear, I was close enough to the stadium or the room that I could hear it coming through. They were still playing it, and I had clips ready for social media. That's how fast that system allowed me to edit. There was very little buckling. It was crazy. I asked
when you researched the software, did you figure out how much it costs? I'm curious.
Yes, I did. Just the software itself, just the license, unfortunately, is $2,000.
Oh my!
One-time fee, or
to my understanding, it is a one-time fee. I'm just going to confirm. Yeah,
I mean, for a scale like Passion, that makes sense. If it's working the way that you're saying it did, pennies. Then $2,000 is not. I'm sure they had to figure out the speed of the NAS and the Ethernet and stuff like that. But
it's 1,995 pounds, which, depending on the conversion rate, might fluctuate. But that is also just the software, right? Then you have to get into the storage, then the infrastructure to be able to edit. And that was not proxy footage. That was 1080p. I mean, it was stream footage, but it was still relatively high quality footage, enough that I could post it on Instagram.
To date, that conversion rate is $2,527.
Okay, so about $2,500. That's not to mention the NAS that you have to build, probably all with flash drives and everything and everything. So it's an expensive setup. There was no question. The rack that I was hooked into was floor to ceiling. It was full of stuff. I'm not a networking guy. I don't want to talk about networking this week because my home network has been killing me all week. But it was excessive.
Yeah,
but incredibly cool. The second thing that allowed me to cut these clips as fast as it was sort of my partner in crime. Her name was Brittany. She might be one of the most.
Brittany.
Yes, she's amazing. She might be one of the most organized, type A people I have ever met. And she had this spreadsheet, and I have the actual spreadsheet that we used for the entire week.
Wow.
Right here in Google Sheets, right? So that's the name of their thing.
Did you ask Passion's permission? Did you ask Cody Carnes if you could use the spreadsheet?
I did ask. I did not ask Cody. I did ask Brittany if I could share this, right? Nice. And this is sort of what it looked like, right? And the good thing about Google Sheets is it's free, right? You can use it too. Yep. And here's basically how we did this. She was sitting in the room the entire time.
Wow.
And every time that she heard something that could be, worth posting, she would write it down in this very first column here. And she would write down the first line. And we'll get to talking about what she was looking for later. As soon as she did that, this macro she set up automatically punched in the timestamp. And that's a real-time timestamp, which correlates exactly to the file that I'm working on. So I could just scrub ahead, find that exact point, and put a cut. And then she would go through and mark, does she need a 9x16? I mean, we only worked with 9x16s for this one, or a 16x9. Do we need captions or no captions? What version are we on? And then what she would do is she would say the very beginning, and then at the very end in the notes, we use that to mark an endpoint. She would just write whatever it was, the final sentence she wanted to be. Jeez. I would listen until I heard that. I'd cut it, and then I would turn that into a subsequence and start, editing it for social, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This allowed us to work so fast. I had this up on my second monitor, and every time I saw something pop up, I would immediately just scrub to that time, start cutting. I could start working on clips of the sermon that were points that were still being made as they were being made, The best thing about this system is I don't need to tell you a free or a cheaper or an easier version to do this. This is the cheap, easy version, way to do this. Google Sheets is free. I'm not sure exactly how this whole macro thing works. I can't imagine it'd be too hard. I probably could have Googled that ahead of time to make that work. And perhaps we could work on a little template that we might be able to share with everybody that others can sort of
that'd be cool.
Take and bring home.
Very cool.
But just the ability to have one person that was in the room, sort of just listening constantly. Her only job was to focus on sermon clips, and then to be able to she didn't have to think about the time. She didn't have to look at her watch and write that down or whatever. She just typed it in when she saw a good start point, and she typed when she saw a good end point, and I could work from there. As soon as the service was over, she would come over and start reviewing the ones I'd finished. Usually I had like 2 or 3 that I was still sort of like finishing up for that 30-minute time slot. And then as soon as that came, we handed it all off to review, which there was a whole part of the social team that was just grammar, and it was just like, spelling and whatever. And then all of those clips got sent up to executive, which I'm not cool enough to know who the executive people were. I do know that
probably Cody Carnes.
Yes, Cody was there.
I do know that all of the speakers got to okay all of their clips, and also take any of the clips that they wanted if they wanted to post on their own stuff as well.
That's nice.
So it was a mad dash the whole time. I was working fast. It was definitely the most I've been stretched in a while, and just sort of the speed and the pace that I had to move.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and there's a couple things that I wanted to bring to all of us when it comes to cutting specifically these kinds of clips. There's a lot of churches who are doing these types of things now. Most of the time, this is like a Monday morning, afternoon sort of thing, where you're getting a time code afterwards, or you're scrubbing through trying to find a good time and then cutting it out. So I wanted to talk about some of the things I learned from Brittany on what made a good sermon clip to passion. And to be honest, they know what they're doing. There was a clip that I cut of a speaker named Sadie, who literally everybody in my family knew except for me. Apparently she's from the Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the Duck Dynasty.
Right.
Yep.
There was I don't know any of these people. I'm sorry.
No, he's not engrossed in this world of Christian contemporary music and Christian contemporary.
Never looked into the dynasty of duck calling? Is that not something you? Anyway,
I know,
Caleb. I know you've got like super specific things to hit. Could you pull up the document one last time, real fast? I just had a couple like spitfire questions about the document that I'm curious what delineated. I see. Caption, no caption. What made you decide between caption, no caption? Did she have a reasoning to that?
Anytime it was a speaker speaking, we always had a caption. Every time there was just worship, there was no caption.
Cool. And then V1, V2, is that just the preview process?
Yeah. So as soon as I had a finished version ready for her to review, I would hit the V1 button.
Very cool.
And then if she had edits and I made them, we would go to the V2. And then when we were ready to send it off to final, we'd swap it to the final.
Nice.
Awesome. And then no cap. I mean, I know what that means culturally, but like no cap, what did that mean in the document?
I meant no caption.
No caption. Nice.
No cap. We need
no
this.
Cap. No cap. We need it. Okay. Anyway, thank you for the spitfires. Caleb, what else you got as far as like the core?
Yeah. So when it came to picking a clip, there were a couple things that really surprised me. So right in the very beginning, actually before I got there, and me and Brittany were sort of talking about like expectations and everything. I've cut sermon clips before. I think we've all cut sermon clips before. And one of the things that really freaked me out about the time schedule that they were worried about was cutting out like pauses, breaks between sentences, little flubs. And like, that's where the time sink is. And I asked her like, how much is an allowable amount of pause before I should start chopping it or whatever? And she told me, this was her quote. And I recognize that this might be a passion thing. This might not be a thing that everybody can do. What she told me was, if it requires editing mid-clip, it's not good enough to post.
Wow.
That's a bar. We're also dealing with speakers that are good enough to be speaking in front of 80,000 people, right? Sure. So I don't know if your average pastor is going to be able to have that level of consistency all the way through.
I'm looking for all the rage comments now from people's pastors saying, hey.
Yeah. For them, it was about speed. It was about turning it around real quick. And they were dealing with a level of talent that was able to, move fast. And the audience was younger. So like, these aren't really slow, methodical preachers. They were high energy, moving pretty quick. And really that kind of thing was almost never an issue. All pauses seemed to be intentional all the way through. The next thing that I sort of noticed was a very big difference between how they picked a clip and how most people pick a clip, even how I pick a clip. I think this is the biggest difference, is when I go to pick a clip, and I think when we've gone to pick a clip and for a sermon or whatever, we're thinking of either the most memorable part, the most sort of exciting part of the sermon where our pastor was sort of jumping around or whatever, maybe when we had the biggest reaction from the people in the congregation, all of that kind of stuff. We're trying to think of the sort of those climax moments. And she didn't care about, I mean, we clipped a lot of them. But what she was looking for exclusively the entire time were hooks. They were a question that was asked, perhaps like a hypothetical by the pastor, maybe like an introductory idea or a statement, something that as soon as you're scrolling through your, 112 post on Reels on Instagram or whatever, what is that one first second thing that is actually going to hook you? Because it doesn't matter how good the answer to your question is. If the question's not good enough for me to care to listen to it, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to listen to the rest of it, right? Well, so when you look back at our spreadsheet here, all of these things right here most of these are incomplete sentences. They were just for me to know, but these are hooks that, of like trying to find things that would be interesting to the audience that they were going for all the way through. And what she would do as soon as she saw that, she would look at the time, and she had seconds on her laptop, and she would wait 60 to 90 seconds. And the hope was that within 60 to 90 seconds, there was an obvious conclusion to the thought. Like a good sort of period. And sometimes those were really exciting moments. Sometimes it sort of like went down to nothing. Sometimes it didn't come. They were like continuing to go on. They hadn't quite finished a thought. If between 60 and 90 seconds, a conclusion didn't come, she would just cross it off. You see, many of these are literally just crossed off. Not good enough. Did not come to an answer within 60 and 90 seconds. We're moving on to the next one, right? That was it. And that was the whole like criterion for, is this worth like chopping up into a clip or not? Right. It wasn't about making sure that we had the biggest moment or the quietest moment or whatever. It was, what is the hook? And did we answer that hook well and quickly enough?
Wow.
That was it. Which is totally different selection process than what I'm used to. I don't know if you guys have a different thing when you're selecting clips like that, but it makes so much sense afterwards. But to me, it was surprising to hear it was that simple.
Yeah.
Caleb, it's actually really encouraging, I think, because I know for the stuff that we did, it would have been, this big moment, right? We want to hit that big moment. But from what you told me and what it sounds like was on the sheet is that those big moments found their way into most clips that already had a hook. So this seems like a different way to measure what you're looking for and just look for the hooks, and hopefully those moments will come. It certainly sounds like a better way to spend your time than trying to take a 10-minute clip and make it into 30 seconds or fit into a 60 to 90 second clip.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that puts a lot of weight on the speaker, which at Passion you're working, like you said, you're working with speakers who know how to make a point, who now know how to make an engaging piece. Not that our pastors and leaders don't, but that is an interesting qualifier to watch out for. But otherwise, I'm really intrigued at how easy and doable those other things are. Truthfully. Like whenever you said this is what I learned at Passion, I was like, I wonder how this is going to scale. But honestly, doesn't sound that hard.
It doesn't sound that hard. It's really the idea of having one person, and it totally could be a volunteer. It totally could be a team of volunteers that just have the same Google Sheet open, and they're listening for hooks and they're listening for conclusions. They write a time code at the hook and they write a time at the conclusion. And then you're done, right? Then you have all of these different clips that you can pick from and find good stuff. You don't have to listen to the whole thing through afterwards. I know, Nick, when you and I were back in Grand Rapids first, one of your Monday morning jobs was to listen through the service and find good clips. You could do that live. right? That could totally be a volunteer position. And just about anybody could do that. That doesn't take a huge amount of skill, right? Brittany was phenomenal at it, and she was very quick in having those time codes in place and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But anybody can be taught how to do this, right? So for Passion, it was, they had the sort of the budget and the time or whatever. My whole job there was to just do this. I mentioned that I was also brought there to do animation. I literally did zero animation the entire time.
Oh man, no way.
The whole time. I brought all my, after I got my plugins set up and everything, it didn't matter.
For the amount of days that you were there, how many overall clips do you think you put out with this method? Like what was possible with the conciseness of this process?
I think in total, between clips of just the speakers and if I included clips of worship, which were admittedly easier because it didn't have captions or anything, it was well over 100. There's no doubt. It was quite a bit. The other thing, so to mention that specifically, one of the other points I had was specifically the captioning process. They had very strict sort of guidelines, ideas of how captions should be done. We spent more time than I expected figuring out like the size of the caption and sort of like the placement of the caption. They were very intentional about making sure that the placement of the caption, first of all, does not move over the course of the thing. Yep. Also, they didn't want it to be like for men over the, crotchal region and for women over the chest region. Like it was very much making sure it didn't fit under that. It was never to be more than 2 lines. So it was, the captions were moving pretty quickly. I'd say 75% of the time it was only a single line all the way through. Wow. And we also did things like it was a bit silly. So I asked for when it comes to grammar, punctuation, stuff like that. They told me to put it in all caps, and I was kind of confused. And I asked, curious why we do that, because like this person isn't yelling or anything. Yeah. And they said, and I quote, "We do all caps because it's one less thing to check for grammar, and we need to turn this around fast." Yeah. Which fair, totally makes sense. Caps it all the way through. You don't have to think about it. Makes a lot of sense.
So with caps, they didn't do punctuation or anything like that. They just, outside of maybe like question marks, it was just caps.
So we did do punctuation. We do, periods and commas or whatever. Another big thing that we ran into, and I'm sure everybody who's had to caption sermons totally knows what I'm talking about here, is that our pastors don't speak in complete sentences. And speaking of those incomplete sentences, they often start things and then just decide not to continue a sentence in the middle of it. Yeah. And then they go back to a totally different sentence. Yeah. And that could be a really confusing, difficult thing to process. And their answer was just put an M-. Use it as a period to a sentence that didn't finish. Sure. And I did that every time. And it just worked. Nice. It's amazing how simple of a solution that was and how easy. But that's just all we had to do. An M- at the end, and it was where. For any time that they were quoting someone and paraphrasing it, we would use single quotes. That was also helpful in times where someone was asking a hypothetical question that would seem like almost like antagonistic or like not the perspective the speaker obviously would have. Sure. Especially if we were opening up a clip with that, they were very careful to put that open quote there to make sure people understood this is not something that they're saying. This is something that they're sort of hypothetical asking. Interesting. If any time it was a direct quote of scripture, not a paraphrase, that was the only time we used double quotes all the way through. It was just sort of interesting understanding these rules and why they do it. And then anytime we had difficulty understanding what a speaker was saying or like a specific word, it was all going to be reviewed by the speaker anyway. So like we took our best guess, we send it in for review, we all took it together, and then they let us know if it was wrong. I don't think we ever got it wrong, actually, or at least I was never told to change anything. So the captions were Premiere's auto caption made it way fast. If you're not using Premiere auto caption to do these kind of things, like it gets you 80% of the way there in 5% of the time. Yeah. And then it was just a matter of tweaking and getting the settings right and getting
with Premiere auto caption, you preset the settings and the font and the size and all that jazz.
You can set a template for that kind of stuff. You can set a background with a little box in the back to make sure that it's like stays clear no matter what's behind it. That's great. You can even set like I had a maximum number of characters and a minimum amount of time it would be on the screen, that kind of thing. So it just makes it really easy. So definitely suggest Premiere for those kinds of things. But
for our DaVinci fanboys, it does do that too. DaVinci does this as well.
Fair enough.
The only one that I know that doesn't do it is Final Cut.
Put some respect on. Never mind. I admit it doesn't work.
When they implement the feature, they can get the respect.
When they implement the feature. So, right. Caleb, the part 2 of this conversation doesn't feel like that hard of a leap. Saying, how do we take this and bring it down to us? Like, I feel like we're already hearing that. Like,
so a lot of it is, the Google Doc, the organization process, how you should format your captions, what kind of clips you should be getting. None of that costs money. I mean, that you need to have a volunteer in the room to making sure that they're listening. And if you're not as concerned getting Without on Sunday, you can be that person in the room and just have your phone there or have a laptop there and just be typing as you listen, right? It makes you pay real good attention to what they're saying because you're listening for those hooks and those answers and whatnot.
Well, I feel like you could even, like, if you convert, I don't know, let's say you take the sermon, you put it into a podcast form, and then you get your clips after the podcast. You could listen to the podcast on the way to or from work, and then automatically you could do some like screenshots of like those time codes while you're doing something else. Like you can drive, you can be writing something, you could be coloring or editing. I feel like there's a lot of different little places where you could do something like that.
Right. So one of the things that was very important to Passion, and of course we had the team and the budget and everything to execute it, was the turnaround time. Right. They wanted these clips. Like I was handing them in within 30 minutes for them to review or whatever. Yeah. But within another 20 to 30 minutes after that, they wanted to be posting them. They wanted to capitalize on the energy of the room. Now, of course, they had 80,000 people in the room, and I'm sure many other tens of thousands of people watching online. Yeah. So there was a lot of energy to be capitalized on, for sure. But even in a typical Sunday morning service, there is like at a normal sized church, there's something to be said about, the idea of having Sunday a church service, having that really cool moment, going on social media later that day and seeing that post about what I just had while everything's still fresh and everything's still cooking, right?
Yep.
It's why you do altar calls at the end when people are feeling all emotional and everything, right? It's all sort of connected. The things are still moving, right? So we had the team and the technology and everything to be able to put that out. However, if that is a goal that you would like to shoot for as a church, number one, make sure sustainability, right? You're now signing yourself up for Sunday afternoon hours. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, that's very true.
I don't think you need to spend $2,000 on the fancy Softron movie recorder thing to get edit while ingest sort of thing. Yep. In one of our favorite programs, one of the programs that built this channel, OBS, there is a function that I've actually been using kind of recently for personal stuff that mimics a lot of this functionality. So I'm gonna bring this over here, and we're about to get recursion, so I apologize that.
Okay.
So this is the OBS that's streaming us right now. Hi, everybody in the chat and everything, right? It's a little ridiculous.
Here, quick spam chat so you can see it on screen.
Right. Yeah. So if you see right here, I have an additional button sort of above everything right here called the replay buffer. And if I go into the settings under recording and everything, I can, I might not be able to do it. Oh yeah, right there. I can set a number of seconds for the replay buffer. And if I turn that on, what OBS is going to start doing is, along with a normal recording or a stream, it's going to start just actively recording everything that it's going in a buffer. So once it hits, in my case, 300 seconds, which I believe is 5 minutes, it's a rolling record, which means it's deleting everything all in the 5 minutes and then holding onto the stuff after that's live.
Okay.
And at any point, I can hit save replay buffer, and within a couple of seconds, that 5 minutes is just going to be saved as a video file on my computer somewhere, right? And I can just start editing that. So if you're of the mind of trying to be able to edit stuff during the surface live, it's not quite as good as edit while ingest and being able to just drag the clip out, into infinity, whatever.
Sure.
But as soon as a clip is over, if you see something showing up in that Google Sheet, that's something we want to capture, just hit the button. And now you've got 2 or 3 minutes or whatever, more than enough time to sort of capture the whole length of the clip that is sort of being talked about. And then you could just go in there and edit it and whatever. And then you'll be good for review shortly after service if you're just working all the way through, right? So that's a way to get very similar functionality, very similar results out of something that I don't think I have to remind anybody that's on this channel, a completely free program. Like that, it's nothing but the hardware power to make it run, So these are achievable goals if you have the team that's willing to be in the room and be capturing it, and you have an editor that's willing to be sort of in the back, hitting that button ready to grab those clips and then being able to jump on it really fast, turn around. So I thought that was a lot of really invaluable information I learned about how they do the posts. Obviously they worked really well. I don't think I even mentioned it, that very quick clip that I turn around of Sadie. Last I checked, it was at like 170 to 180,000 likes and millions of views, right? So they know what they're doing.
How did you not know who this person was?
I don't know. She was on stage. That was the first time I saw her. But what they're doing works. It's functioning at a large scale. And I do believe that a lot of the techniques and tools that they're using can be used at the small scale as well. Maybe not the $2,000 software, but OBS can get a similar functionality. So I wanted to share sort of my experience. I had a great time. Awesome. It was certainly overwhelming. It was exciting. I got to be in the room for sort of one of the services and just feel the energy of these people on stage. I had no idea who they are, playing songs I've never heard before in my life. But it's always cool to see. I mean, how often do you get to see 80,000 people worshiping in the same room, right? That's always a really cool moment to be a part of.
Very cool.
Very thankful for the opportunity to do that.
So Caleb, in like a sentence or less, what did you learn from Passion that churches can take away from this conversation? Recap.
I'd say when trying to show the world sort of what is happening in your room, in your sanctuary, make sure that you're picking clips that hook them immediately and that fulfill and answer the question that you hooked them with. That I would say, if anything that was the takeaway, if anything made the biggest difference of my understanding of what makes a good clip, that was it. Finding something that had a good hook and that answered that hook in the end.
Love that. Cool.
Yeah.
Whew. And that's kind of your experience, and Caleb. That would you do that again? That experience doing 100 some clips over the course of 4 days, 3 days.
Sure, I might bring some more energy drinks. That was exhausting, but yeah, the team was great. They were a lot of fun to work with and everything. So yeah, I had a good time.
Very cool.
Good.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and transition in the back half of our conversation today. Nick mentioned at the very beginning of today that we wanted to discuss a little bit of a format change as we head into the new year. Fortunately, we as a team were able to start off the year with kind of a vision and ideas day where we got to get a little bit into how can we make the coming year better for our content. And one of our ideas is what we're going to it's a segment that we're going to be calling Blackout. We recognize that our podcasts, our live podcasts, our audio podcasts are a little bit longer than they used to be in season 1. So basically, long story short, what we're going to do is we're going to have our primary content in the beginning of the conversation, just like essentially what Caleb did. And then toward the back of the conversation, we'll land the podcast for our audio-only listeners. And then we'll head into a segment that we're calling Blackout, where we'll be doing AMA-style conversational questions with people in our audience, people that are watching live. We'll send out requests in the Discord, so make sure to visit the Discord. We'll also be sending out question spaces on Instagram as well, specifically asking if people have questions about the topics that we're going to be touching on. So we're going to be doing a little bit of an example of that today. This time it will be included in the audio-only format of the podcast, but future times it will not be. But before we get there, there's something we kind of wanted to throw out into the world for those that are listening and that join us for all the episodes. We are actually looking to develop a stream team, very similar to kind of the concept that Caleb was talking about, assembling quotes and supporting the production. We are looking for a small team of volunteers to help us find clips, to help us monitor our live audio, to help us mediate comments, and then also to help technical direct the experience. This is a volunteer opportunity that we have been kind of chewing on for a bit, that some members of our team will be leading. And if you would like some practical experience, if you'd like some experience just to get connected with us and be behind the scenes and see what we do to put together the podcast, we wanted to extend the opportunity to do so. If that's something that you would like to do, or you would like to consider doing, in this episode show notes, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, you can find a link to a Google form that you can fill out, and then we'll contact you from there to talk about kind of the specific details of what volunteering for the stream team could be. So that being said, let us know if that's something you're involved in. And then if you're watching us live, please feel free to go ahead and comment some things as we get into our first ever segment called Blackout. I feel like that would have been a good time to have some kind of really awesome trailer with music, but I think in light of that, why don't we? We're gonna make it a blackout. So Caleb, I think you already turned your lights out. Nick, I don't know if you have any lights to turn out. I could turn my lights out here.
Out.
Okay, hang on. Welcome to.
I'll hold. I spent like 30 minutes before the podcast setting up myself a smart light so I could just do this with one tap and I didn't have to do it live,
Okay, you're awesome and we can't do that. So welcome to Go Nick.
Also, yes, we unashamedly stole this idea from the WAN show, and I'm not sorry about it.
I thought we talked about going to logo for a second, guys.
Caleb, I don't have a logo.
No,
I could throw a logo.
We're supposed to leave a space of quiet so that we say welcome to, and everyone turn around real quick.
Ready? Okay.
Ready? Welcome to Blackout. Hey, Blackbar's newest segment where we answer your questions about the topics that we discuss. Hopefully, as we continue to bring on more guests in season 2, this will be an opportunity to kind of get into a lot more different questions that don't necessarily fit in the conversation, or maybe that are more personal, or get into different details that we don't have time or capacity to hit in the episode. Hopefully, moving forward, the core information in our episode will be about an hour or less, 60 minutes or so. Blackout will kind of leave a little bit more open after the fact, because we know some of you like to hang out and just have fun. And in when I sent out some questions a few weeks ago, and Nick sent out some questions, we were asking the community for their just broad feedback and broad questions. So we'll kind of hit some of those today. A lot of the questions were about pizza, so we'll answer those kind of questions, but hopefully we'll also get another layer deeper, either within our conversations or within guests' conversations as well. So guys, we'll get into some of these questions. Before we get into it, do you guys have any anything you wanted to share before we move forward? So
this is going to be a very conversational, very laid back part of the podcast moving forward. It's going to be chill. You feel free to ask us questions related to everything that we usually talk in the podcast. But also, if you want to talk about World of Warcraft, I've been playing that a lot recently, and I'm really happy to talk about that.
Also, Baldur's Gate. Been playing a lot of that.
Baldur's Gate, yes, yeah, for sure, whatever you want, or probably
Lethal
Minecraft
Company is also
Lethal Company,
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get into kind of show you the format of Blackout. Got a handful of questions from a variety of folks. Just wanted to share some of their names on the front end, and then if anyone gives us live questions, we'll share those as well. So thank you so much to Abner Cruz, Greg Malsky, Bro Brock, John Mark Clark, and then Tori for submitting questions either on the Discord or on our Instagram. Of course, you can find both of those. You can track us down on social media, and you can join the Discord at discord.blk.bar. Yeah. So question number 1, we're going to get into some of the lighter ones on the front end. And as I said, there were a lot of pizza questions because, Caleb, we've talked before about how you don't really like pizza.
Have we said that publicly?
I think so. I think we said it in season 1 a couple times. But first of all, I think we can all agree that that's just a super problematic perspective. I don't know why you even feel like you can not like pizza.
You know what it is? It's the red sauce. It's the tomato sauce. I don't like it. I don't like it on anything. I don't like spaghetti. I don't like
ketchup.
It's okay. It's sort of my last choice in condiment. Like I'll pick just about anything else. It's just not my thing.
Do you not like tomatoes at all, though?
They're okay. Like an actual tomato, I'll put it on a burger or something like that.
You keep using this phrase, they're okay. I feel like if you were starving in the desert,
scale of
you
1
eat
to
them
10,
only because you had
10
to.
being like the best food you've ever consumed, and 1 being absolute garbage. Like, where are you putting red sauce? Like a tomato red sauce
red
for like
sauce?
a pizza.
Oh,
Scale of 1 to
like
10.
like a 3 or a 2.
Oh my gosh!
So here's the thing. I'll if I'm really hungry and there's pizza in front of me, I'll eat it. That's that's fine. But I'm never going to choose it. It will never be my choice. There's like a pizza place near where I live now called American Pie that I have gone to and enjoy it, but it's all the weird pizza. It's like barbecue chicken pizza. They have a mac and cheese pizza.
Listen,
they have a chicken Alfredo
pizzas.
pizza.
Those are great
but
pizzas.
they're not
Do you
pizza.
like
they're
those?
pizza shaped food.
What do you mean they're not pizza? Of course they're pizza. Listen, probably one of the best slices I had was in Seattle. They had I just forgot. It was a pad thai pizza with a peanut sauce, and it was a pizza, and it was phenomenal. I will always remember that pizza, and I have no reason to not classify that as a pizza.
Okay, so I like any pizza that doesn't have tomato sauce on it. Is that what you
so
want
you can
me to
have
say?
a barbecue chicken pizza. You can have a chicken Alfredo pizza. Cece used to have like a mac and cheese pizza. Like those are viable options.
Okay, then that's fine. But when
pizza
we have to agree.
People.
We have to agree that, but when most people talk about pizza, they're talking about red sauce and cheese and pepperoni, right?
That's traditional.
Yeah. And that's what I don't care for. It's just not my thing. And people are saying, have you had like New York style? Yes. Have you had Chicago style? That's the worst. There's so much sauce in the Chicago
There's
pizza.
extra sauce in the Chicago style.
Instead of the sauce.
What about Detroit style?
It is the best kind.
I was going to say there's less sauce in there, right?
There is less sauce.
It's just a lot of bread.
I still won't choose to have it. It's just not my preference.
Okay, so Caleb is okay with
a lot of
pizza, but he's not okay with red sauce pizza.
Yes, correct.
I think that's I've learned something here today. Okay. I did not know that about you, Caleb. I'm
glad of all the things I've talked about today that's the thing that's like, oh, I should make a note of that.
If there's one thing that you walk away from this podcast, it's not how to create sermon clips really easily and quickly.
Yes.
Caleb likes pizza.
Yeah.
Just not
Do we
pizza
have any
with
topics that are not pizza?
Well, I'm just curious. Two quick things. We had several questions, and I kind of merged them together because people were asking about Dave Portnoy's scale. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He always rates pizzas. Usually they're somewhere between 6 and 7.5. Yeah. But what about like stuffed crust pizza? And then do you have like a favorite topping? Now that we've classified, you're okay with non-red sauce pizza.
Stuffed crust pizza, I'll eat the crust and then someone else can eat the rest. I'm okay with cheese sticks and stuff like that. It's the sauce. I don't like the sauce. Do I have a favorite topping?
Listen.
Like chicken Alfredo. I don't know. Like something that's not going to be on anything but red sauce. That's my
Caleb
qualifier.
is the perfect friend to have if you hate eating the crust of your pizza. Specifically,
I'll eat your crust. Sure. Well, cut it off first. I will not eat something you ate and then hand it to me. But yeah, I'll eat the crust.
Oh my gosh.
I can just imagine Megan getting a pizza and then taking a pizza cutter and just cutting off the stuffed crust and then giving Caleb the stuffed crust portion. And then she and Selah just take the
honestly, if you're gonna order pizza and I'm gonna be there, the nicest, most loving thing that you could do is just order me a crazy bread just by itself.
Sure.
I will just eat that and I'll be so happy. And we all know crazy bread is just better than pizza. It's just not socially acceptable to eat an entire crazy bread by yourself like it is to eat 4 slices of pizza.
That's the same logic that you can use for cheese sticks. You're not going to sit down and eat 6 cheese sticks in a go, but you'll eat 6 mozzarella cheese sticks now that it's been fried and slathered.
Yeah.
Fried and breaded?
Do you eat red sauce
in marinara sauce?
Or do you go no?
Yeah, do you
go no? No. Okay.
Ranch.
Sometimes. All right. Well,
right. I remember that.
You're a maniac. Okay. Let's move on from our pizza questions. The next question. What was your favorite moment of 2023? This can be ministry, business, personal, etc. And did it involve pizza? Just kidding. That's not part of the question. But favorite moment, guys. What do you got? What do you got going?
Good night. I didn't see this question beforehand. Don't make me answer first.
I'll go first.
You got it?
Yeah, I don't mind going first. Yeah,
go first.
My wife turned 30, and we went to Pittsburgh to celebrate. It was we love going to cities. We love traveling cities. I mentioned Seattle, where we went to school outside of Philadelphia. We went to Pittsburgh. Beautiful city. It's very different than the others, but we loved it. We had a great time. We've only been there 2 or 3 times together, but we just always form great memories. So Pittsburgh, highly recommend. 10/10.
Nice.
Nick, what do you got?
Man, dude, there are so many things this past year. 2023 treated the Mayo family fairly well for the majority of it. That's specifically us Michigan Mayos, right? I mean, there were a lot of really great highlights. Tori and I did a lot of vacationing this year, which was really great. We went to a bunch of different beaches in Michigan and some other different places. We got to see a hockey game in Detroit. Tori is a Blues fan. I'm a Blues fan by proxy. And they got to beat the Red Wings. That was cool. But I think like one of the biggest highlights that like was really cool to see was this past year I made the transition from my job at Grand Rapids First to being full time with Blackbar. And it's really cool having that we've built this thing, as far back as like when we were at Valley Forge, right? We were in that room with a couple missionaries talking about how to use media to as not just a media like a ministry help, but like actual ministry, right? And now from 2013 to 2023, a whole decade later, right? This is we're fulfilling that dream and also doing it in a way that we can also support our families and put bread on the table. And it's always nicer to be able, in my perspective, it was nicer to be able to dedicate all my time to Blackbar and the ministry of Blackbar than kind of giving it the scraps, right? Like I would have other responsibilities and other things I would have to do. And then when I had the time to, I could do Blackbar. So now, it's a lot of fun to be able to be in the Discord every day, hop into the voice chat, talking to people, maybe not every day, especially when client work comes in. But
Also, looks like John Holman says go Blues. So
yeah, John, go Blues.
Cool. Caleb, what about you, buddy? Also, do you have a Blackout thing for the bottom of our screen? Is that a thing that you made? No?
There it is.
Hey, there you go. All right, Caleb, what about you, buddy?
I could probably list half a dozen things, but the thing I will go with is, and it's going to sound really silly the first time I say it, but I started a Dungeons & Dragons campaign this year.
Yep.
And I have been working on this sort of world with my buddy Steven for almost 2 entire years, sort of building the lore and the backstory. We have like over 200 pages at this point of content. We built this universe so that we would be able to have games and campaigns in it for the next 10 years. And our introductory games and the parties that played it couldn't have gone better. It was a splash. We had people in full meltdowns, in tears on our second game. These guys were
for those that don't know, that's a good thing. It was a good wants that to happen. That's not a bad thing.
It was people very emotionally invested. We have an excellent group of players, and we worked really hard. It was just so fulfilling to see it. And Dungeons & Dragons for me is very much a creative outlet where sort of I get to do my own thing and it doesn't have to go through a review process, and like I get to tell the story I want to tell, with Steven and I together. And it's just been really exciting. And if you ask me later, you can watch it online. It is technically on YouTube. We stream every episode. Mostly for us right now, just to have a backup of it. But if you'd like to watch it, and watch these guys as various people in a fantasy world, you can do that too. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Just a slight warning: there's some language from some of the folks that joined, so just don't be
right.
offended if you hear that.
It is not necessarily a Christian evangelistic.
It's not a Christian Minecraft server.
No. So we do have. It's been a lot of fun.
I feel like there's something about there's just something about having a good creative outlet separate from your main vocation or your main job. I think there's just a lot of value in finding that. I'm glad that you found that, Caleb. That's awesome. So next question, as we head into 2024, why do you believe that digital media ministry is still important? We don't have to all answer all of these, but
sure.
If anyone has any thoughts, why is digital media ministry still important in 2024?
I mean, in 2020, right, when we started Blackbar, and it just happened to be right at the beginning of the pandemic, right? It was very clear that it was important, right?
Yeah.
When all of a sudden everybody was no longer able to meet in their churches and stuff, digital form of ministry became very important to people. And I know during that time, there was a lot of dialogue about, and something that we've continued to dream about, of like, how do you have 100% online ministry, right? 100% online church. And I think there's space that that will be the case and will be very true for a lot of communities. But one thing I think a lot of our church communities that don't necessarily fit into the 100% online category will need to have figured out, or are currently figuring out, is that your congregation is already invested and engaged on these digital platforms. So like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, they're already engaging in those places. And those places are, trying to have their attention just as much as you're hoping that the sermon message is implanted in their brain, they're walking out. And even something that I think is incredible, Caleb, about passion and could be a possible way to look at doing this ministry for your church, is that as soon as people walked out of that building, they got to see what they had just experienced. How many times have we heard either preached to us as a challenge or something that we've experienced, where you hear an amazing service and you walk out the church building and it just out your ear, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to continue and interact and remind people and have a way for them to re-engage in your church community and the message that's being shared post service is a great thing. And being able to expand that beyond just the Sunday service. Church is more than just Sunday, right? We say that all the time. Digital ministry is something that can continue and opens a window for everyone through your church services into the week and beyond. And so digital ministry is just something that, like, I don't think is going to go away. It can only increase, and something that I'm very excited to continue doing through this ministry, Blackbar.
Speaking of Blackbar, it's total blackout time.
I know, man. I'm so sorry.
Really seriously.
I saw that, and
do you
I was
have
just
another
like,
battery?
I gotta keep going.
Is your camera dead?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Caleb, you got some ideas?
Yeah. Obviously I've spoken on this topic quite a bit, and I don't know if I have anything new to say. I will say, obviously it's a contentious opinion, perhaps, but I don't believe that anyone in 2024 can say they take the Great Commission seriously and not take digital evangelism seriously. I don't understand how, if this is sort of our goal, this is sort of our mission as human beings, to be sort of light unto the world, to worship God and to invite others to worship him, how the most powerful communication tool that has ever been invented in the history of the world is not like very, very high on your priority list for understanding how to use it and how to evangelize with it. And I recognize that there are barriers to that. There are traditional barriers of how we sort of reformat our understanding of what fellowship looks like, and sort of cultural barriers as well, and certainly technological barriers of people learning how this stuff works. But there is no question in my mind of the potential of this kind of ministry. And again, you cannot convince me you're taking the Great Commission as seriously as it should be taken if you are unwilling to experiment with the technology God has given us in this time to reach people outside of our walls.
Yeah. And I guess I'll just add one small, almost like maybe not a cautionary tale. I think I've been learning a lot, and we'll get into this more in a minute, but I've been learning a lot about the value of setting boundaries. And I think digital media can be so all-consuming that we have to be careful to find that balance of what is the worth to my community and then what is a distraction. Because I feel like we always see this in January, right? We always see prayer and fasting events come around. People decide to kick off the year with new settings. Yep. And most often, a lot of my friends, I'm seeing like, hey, it's time for my social media break. I'll be back in a month. While there's immense value in social media, we have to figure out what our boundaries are for using social media. So in the same way, we got to figure out what is the way in which to leverage social media for ministry, while also keeping and protecting your health. So it's kind of like a hand-in-hand thing. I agree with both of the things that you guys said, and also be healthy with it.
Yeah,
That's only going to happen intentionally,
Definitely.
Yeah. Yes, PJ, this episode is sponsored by, just kidding. It is not sponsored by Elgato. But hey, if you have contacts at Elgato and they would like to sponsor us, by all means, we talk about OBS so much. Okay. What? Okay.
OBS is not made by Elgato.
Sorry. Ignore me. I am looking at my cam link. Thank you for correcting me, Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're in the Blackout segment, because we can be wrong about things. Just kidding. Okay, so this is really personal. I forgot this one wasn't here. What about your faith relationship with digital media ministry is most exciting or inspiring to you in this season? Man, we're getting...
It's most exciting and inspiring.
What about your faith relationship with God is most exciting? Oh my gosh. Well, I will give you guys time to think. I think I'll just play off of what I was just saying. One of the things that I was trying to figure out and focus on in 2023 was how to rest. I'm not very good at resting. I put a lot of expectation behind it. So I think the reason I gave the advice about the boundaries is because that's exactly what I've been working on. What does it look like to establish healthy boundaries? To not just scroll on Instagram for 25 minutes at the beginning of every single day, but rather where is the space in which I can engage with God? And I think it's been unique and interesting coming along that process and figuring that out. Because I haven't figured it out fully, but boundaries are important. Prioritizing disciplines are important. So I don't know. That's just kind of something that I've been learning. And as hard as that is to figure out, it's been encouraging and exciting to me that even all the years that I've been a believer, I can still find new ways to new problems to solve in getting closer to God. I guess that makes sense. So
sure, man.
Anyone else?
Do you want to go next, or do you want me to go next, Nick?
You go next. Go ahead, Caleb.
I feel like this year for me has certainly been a year of, I'll call it reconstruction is probably how I'd clarify it. Yeah. I've certainly been through a very long, probably decade long at this point, process of deconstructing and sort of pulling apart my faith and ripping bits apart.
You can go back and listen to some episodes where we talk about this.
Yeah. There's certainly times where I would have pulled apart my entire faith. I would have identified as agnostic. There were times where my faith was very sort of shaky while doing the ministry of Blackbar. But this year, I feel like I got some personal clarity on sort of like what my purpose is as a person, not just within Blackbar and whatever. Sort of like, to put it very simply, I feel like my job is to be a cycle breaker, right? To take people who are stuck in systems, to be stuck in cycles, and sort of help them break that paradigm shift, whether that be for myself, whether it be my family, whether it be my friends, or whether it be in sort of the ministry of Blackbar and working with churches and everything. And I feel like that has sort of given me clarity with Blackbar of what I would like to do, is sort of help people understand the unhealthy or unhelpful sort of cycles or practices or traditions that we have as church media people haven't been around that long, and yet we have already developed unhealthy practices and traditions, and like create and invent and inspire people to break past that and come up with new solutions and find new ways to break other people's cycles, to break our community's cycles, to break, this cascading effect of paradigm shift, is really incredibly exciting to me, and it's life-giving. And I feel more passion for this kind of thing than I have in a long time, and I'm excited to really focus into it. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Nice, man. Yeah, I guess a similar but different way, something I've been thinking about a lot this year is just communication. And I don't know if that's going to ring the way it does for me, for most people in our audience, because we all do communication, right? That's what marketing is. It's just communication. But I even think going into this next year being an election year, there's going to be a lot of discourse, and it's not all going to be helpful. It probably mostly won't,
Nope.
But communication, can be very bad, but it can also be really great. Communication is the way that one soul is able to relate to another, right? The way that we fix problems, the way that we keep marriages together is through communication, right? And so my hope is that this intersection of faith and marketing can produce something related to that, that we can teach our audience to be able to communicate to people within the faith and people outside the faith in a way that is healthy, that is life-giving, that everyone can walk away from having become better people from, rather than just, I'm really angry, or I didn't get anything from that conversation, right? So my hope is that this intersection of faith and media can produce that.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it. That's it.
Amen, dude. I mean, if I'm being honest, the Blackout
Let's
session, I think we're doing that. I think we're teaching our audience, that communication isn't just about, it's not it's not the thing that you're saying. It's how you're saying it. It's how people hear it. Yeah. And that's how your message is received, is how you say it and how someone hears it. It's not just the content. So anyway, that's me.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for sharing, getting vulnerable. We got a couple questions that are like advice or thoughts. So let's go ahead and get into some of these. The first, with the rise of authentic or less produced feeling content on social media like TikTok, do you all think that the trend will be picked up by churches? Is it a style worth following and creating our content around being authentic?
I have a interesting thought about this, but it's a little counterintuitive to what I think most people do. So if you guys have something, go first, okay?
Well, Caleb already said yes.
Yes.
All right, go for it.
As you timed yourself.
Yeah. I listened to a video and I do not remember the video. I do not know who it was, so I apologize because I'm totally going to be ripping some. So I'm plagiarizing, but I'm telling you I'm plagiarizing, which is probably the next best thing.
I guess that's okay.
Welcome to Blackout.
Oh, it's all right then.
One of the and I think this could be projected onto pastors specifically, but I think a lot of people who work at or work for businesses on their social media have a propensity to try to act like businesses. And businesses are doing their best on social media to act like people, right? Often failing at it. But if you are already a person, a pastor, a person in leadership in vocational ministry or otherwise, you already have the advantage of being a people. You just have to act like it. You just have to stop pretending that you're not one, right? And that means sharing the wins and sharing your losses. People are drawn into vulnerability. Produce content and everything like that. Having a really nice camera, having a really nice lighting. That's certainly it has its time and its place. We are all professionals at doing that kind of thing. But just sometimes turning on the camera and speaking directly to it and being honest, sort of where you are at the time with less produced or whatever, it goes so long in a visual language to communicate your own humanity to the people who are watching. I think, just like what Nick was saying, it's not what you're saying, it's also how you're saying it. It's also how you're recording it and with what you're recording it with and where you're posting it. All of those things go into the subconscious calculation of how I'm deciding to receive the information you're giving me. So yeah, I do think that churches should work to be more authentic and less produced. And I think that should be true on social media. I think that should be true in the building as well. I think that should be true face to face as well.
For sure. Yeah, we've got on our staff, and creative marketing teams. Shout out to Lindsay and Megan, to Gen Z on our staff, and they talk all the time about how much people are looking for authenticity, especially the younger generations. And I think we're seeing that in the way social media is being conducted. Like the photo dump has been a big feature lately, just a bunch of either not really edited or not really framed well pictures that are just meant to tell hey, this is my January, or a bunch of people did this was my 2023 photo dump. As silly as the phrase might sound if you're using it in a sentence, it's just an attempt to be this is who I am, and this is my experience, and I'm not going to put a filter on it. I'm not going to put a bunch of like time and effort crafting it. Just here's what it is, and here's who I am. And I think churches can only benefit from doing stuff like that, like showing people without having to put this big like production on. Like, are you taking pictures from your phone from the Sunday service of people experiencing God? Like, that'll show people out that are watching from the outside, that are stepping on your digital doorstep for the first time, that this is who we are. This is the vibe we're going for. We are trying to connect with God in a real way. And I think content that shows that is just always going to be, not always going to be better, but it's going to be beneficial, especially as we're moving into more and more digital authenticity. And even to counteract the AI wave, I see a lot of creators that are saying one of my goals for the coming year is to not use anything AI, because they want to be more authentic. They don't want to be trapped into this. Like, people always talk about, like, I mean, it's the uncanny valley thing, right? It's like most artists can detect what an AI image is because there's something off about it. And I think that's just a counter push that people are trying to do away from AI to be more authentic as well. So, Nick, what is your, I don't know what direction it's going to go, but what is your potentially counter idea?
So this may
you're fired. Get out of here. Go. Leave.
This may swing a little bit like more towards the negative side, right?
Yeah.
Of this conversation, but I'm basing my opinion on kind of some of the things I've seen on TikTok specifically.
Yeah.
But I feel like we are reaching or have reached the apex of the authentic, quote unquote, authentic feel on social media. That's not to say that you shouldn't. I'm just saying I think we're reaching its height. The reason I'm saying that is because
authenticity is like a trend, right? That's you're saying as like a trend.
Yes, yeah, as a trend. Because I think what we're starting to see is a lot of businesses are starting to take that and they're running with the idea of like an individual or a creator. Yep. And I know from my experience, and this is only my experience, this could be other people, is that like I'll find a creator I like, or I'll see something and they start talking about something. All of a sudden, like there's this quick turn. It's like, oh, but this is a advertisement for this cool mug from Niagara Falls, right? They're the best, and it starts sounding like a snippet from the Truman Show all of a sudden, nice where reference. Like they've been clearly given a script, right? And so like they're taking the idea of like the cell phone video, a individual, and they're taking it and making it into like this authentic idea and make it into this very business thing. And so I think what Caleb said is still true. Like, people want to hear from people. They don't want to necessarily hear from businesses. But I think what we're going to start seeing possibly in the next decade is a bit of a reaction to how businesses have leveraged this to sell you things. And for that reason, it has become inauthentic. And so I think what you're going to see is probably a little bit of return to form in terms of production value, especially as technology has risen to meet most creators. There's a lot of features within your own iPhone that can make really great content without having to worry about getting a $2,000 camera or whatever to produce it. So
it's almost like an overproduced authenticity.
I think it's the difference between trying to look authentic and trying to be authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's the litmus test. Are you trying to do this because you actually want to be honest? Or are you trying to do this because you think people thinking you're honest will get you more attention? And if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it's not going to work. It's always going to backfire. So there you go.
Okay, well, just to keep us moving, because we have a few more questions and not a ton of time, because we're still going to try to keep Blackout in under the 1 hour 30. So we'll continue to work toward that. So, guys, I know you've prepared, you've seen some of these questions, so I'll spitfire some of these real fast. We'll see if we can get like a couple sentence responses. What's a good baseline PC and baseline Mac specs for church video creative in 2024? I know we had a video about this recently that did a little bit of framing, but then also a little bit of hopeful looking forward to the year. Has our opinion changed on that? Or Caleb, I know you kind of took a lot of the spec details of that episode.
The answer will be it depends. Of course it does. It'll depend on, are you using 1080p video? Are you using 4K video? Are you using 720 video? Hopefully you're not using 720 video. or it'll depend on the codec that you're working in, even Mac or PC. I'd say if you're going for a Mac, sort of the baseline MacBook Pro model right now is going to be awesome for doing video editing, and just most other, pretty much anything outside of 3D is going to be pretty great for. Generally, you're going to get more bang for your buck if you go for a desktop. So an intro level gaming PC, I would say try to spend in the like $750 ish range. Make sure it has a dedicated GPU. Make sure it has at least 16 gigs of RAM. You'll probably be okay. For the most of stuff, without like giving you, unfortunately, if I say any specific things, it's going to just date the video immediately, right?
Yes, for sure.
But if you go for a intro level gaming PC, because it uses a lot of the same hardware, then you should be okay for the most part. You'll get more bang for the buck if you use a desktop, but if you have to have a laptop, I would go for the baseline MacBook Pro.
Nice. Cool. If I'm starting video editing, should I invest in a good set of headphones or a set of desktop speakers first? What are some recommendations?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends.
Our answer to all these are just, it depends.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's an argument to be made, like, where's your final video going, right? Because if it's just going to someone's cell phone, I mean, you should be listening to the final product on how it is going to be delivered.
Sure.
Right? So that might mean headphones. But I imagine, Caleb, you probably have some similar opinions on this. I'd say if you're going to go headphones, you got to make sure that they are rated like flat, right? They're what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Get some decent ones for sure. Studio headphones specifically. Most headphones have a built-in sort of curve to the EQ. They'll cut out some mids and more bass and more treble, like a Beats by Dre, right? You're going to blow out your ears with bass or whatever. It's not good to mix on those because when you listen to on everything else, it'll have a really low bass. That being said, generally speaking, for like music production people, if you can do speakers, that's always more optimal. Hearing what it sounds like in a room with big sort of like an open sound space is more optimal if you can get it. There's a lot of people that are limited either by where their office is and what is next to their office and who is nearby their office, and whether they can get away with speakers. Certainly, if you can do both, that is preferable. Yeah. But if you're going to do headphones, make sure they're studio headphones. I prefer open back headphones. I find them more comfortable, and they give you a little bit of a wider sound stage for that kind of thing. Yeah. But if you're going to be mixing something for your sanctuary, listen to it in your sanctuary. If you're going to be mixing something that's going to be on your phone, listen to it on your phone. If you're going to be mixing something that's going to be listened to in a lot of different places, mix it on the best speakers that you have or the best headphones you have, and then listen to it on everything else and make sure it still sounds okay. Listen to your car, listen to your headphones, out of your phone, whatever you got to do. Just confirm that it's going to work.
I feel like I just watched this social media story the other day where Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, they recorded their entire album in a studio, and then they went and put it on a track and then played it in their crappy car speaker, and they fully changed the mix because they knew that's where it was going to be heard. So I feel like that's awesome. A fun story about affirming what you guys just said, like make sure you mix for where it's going to be going. Right. Next question. What are the best tools for automating my social media posts? I want to post consistently, but setting reminders on my phone are a pain. Do auto post services get lower engagement for any reason, or are they simply a tool that helps support the system? I mean, Nick, I know you've had a lot of run-in with social media content. I feel like social media tools in general in-app have been improving dramatically.
Oh, so much.
Like Meta has always been a pretty popular external application, but like Meta, I feel like has been adding some pretty good features.
Meta has some really good scheduling features now within their own apps. You're right, like other services like Later and some other ones exist that can be utilized for that function. But the core of the quote, I think, is like this. The core of the question is the idea of, will your post do worse? And I think, like, to my best research, it's been, well, no, it's not going to perform worse. But I do think there may be a bit of a perception that it does. Because if you're talking about a smaller account, like potentially a church, my guess is that as soon as you post, a lot of people are knowing you're posting. including yourself. And so there may be some initial engagement that happens because everyone is aware that a post is happening.
Yeah, sure.
So without that organic growth, you could see some diminished returns in a post that's done at another time. Now, that being said, I think it's also important to be looking and reviewing how your posts do when they are posted throughout the day. A client that we work with, at one point, we had posted midday because they're a client that's in the middle of the US, and we figured, well, then that's time enough for like people to wake up and start looking at things. But we found out that they actually perform a lot better when we post it like 8-9 o'clock Eastern time rather than that time for them. So we've adjusted that way. So I would say like scheduling and stuff, it's not going to affect your overall outcome, but it's definitely a metric you need to be watching because it's going to affect how and when people interact with it, which will then affect how many more people interact with it.
Well said. Awesome. This one I wanted to spend a few minutes on before we get into our final question of the day. This says, is it ever okay to be forceful when dealing with other workers on your team or in the ministry as a whole if it brings the desired result? There's a friend that shared in the Discord about their experience in which they'll ask nicely several times, even offered setting reminders and setting follow-ups and setting pre-meetings. But unfortunately, until they are stern and what they call forceful, that's when they get the results, not when they're nice, proactive, or, willing to support that community. So is it ever okay to be forceful when dealing with other people on your team? And I would say this probably goes for ministry, non-ministry, volunteers, etc.
I feel like the way the question is asked, is it ever? Yeah, there are times when an amount of force is certainly justified and required, but as many asterisks as I can throw at the end of that, of like it should be the and it sounds like the person asking this question has gone through a lot of those other options. I think things my answer changes depending on like, are you dealing with volunteers? Or are you dealing with staff, like paid staff? How long have they been serving in that position? What are you asking? Are you asking for really unreasonable things and expectations? I think this is going to be sort of like Nick was saying before. It's coming up a couple times now. It's not just what you say; it's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
And we all know that saying something very nicely, hey, can you send this? Like it'd be really helpful, whatever. That is communicating. It can communicate. It can be read by some people as what you're asking for is not super high priority. Otherwise, you would have communicated that to me. Now, if you are directly communicating to someone in a friendly, nice, whatever way, that this is a high priority thing that you need right now, and you even communicate the consequences of what this is going to happen, and then they're not doing it on top of that, then okay, yeah, it's not like, listen, I've made it clear that there are consequences for this. Now you're making my life harder for this, and I need you to understand that like what you're not giving me or what you're not sort of enabling or whatever has consequences on me, and that's not fair. I'd say having an open line of communication where you help them understand that your stern language or your stern tone or whatever is a consequence that they can bring about or avoid to some extent. You know what I mean? Like helping them understand why it is that you're feeling the need to be stern because you're not getting results of anything. Like have that open line of communication. Be honest with them. Tell them, I only feel like I'm getting results from you when I'm being like, I'll use the word rude. I don't think that's, but sure. And I don't feel like I don't want to be that way. And I don't feel like that's fair. How can I communicate to you that this is a high priority thing without doing that? Because I don't want to be that way. And I know you don't want to be talked that way. Right. Yeah. So speaking clearly and honestly and openly and opening that almost like meta line of communication, not about the actual project, but how we're communicating about the project, in my experience, goes a long way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a couple Spitfire things because I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this. One, Caleb's exactly correct. communication is always going to be the best first step. If you haven't communicated with the person yet, if you haven't sat down and talked to them straightforward to the point with being respectful to their time and not being rude, communicating, these are my needs and these are one that I don't feel they're being met. That's number one. Do that first. I think even scripture talks about if you have tension with your brother, go to them first. If that doesn't work out, then bring in someone else to help advise as well. I think that's also a good model. If it's a volunteer team, like Caleb said, like we were mentioning, what is the workload and expectation that you're having for them? Do you have the relational currency to ask for extra from them? And if you don't, how can you change your relationship with that person or that team to maybe have those conversations in a greater way? So like if Caleb and I aren't like close, I'm not going to be able to ask him for some of the deeper, more time invested things because I haven't built that relational currency. So make sure you're prioritizing that. If this is an in-organization thing where you have staff members, where you have team leaders, even where you have volunteer team leaders that have been trusted with a degree of leadership, I am a little worried we start to get into a culture thing. Is this a culture that your entire church or your organization exhibits? Then it might be a problem that the leadership has that's kind of trickled down into the other leadership. And that's a difficult place to be in. I do want to throw us back just because we kind of hashed out a lot of this in episode 10, how to be creative when the plan changes last minute. We get into a lot of really valuable production and post-production ideology and mentality things in that. So definitely check out that episode because we talk a lot about how to impact and change culture. So I know that was a lot, but those are just kind of the things that come to mind. It's good that you're recognizing that you have to take this extra mile, and it's also valuable to make sure to do the extra communication, the relational connection in order to navigate and get to the bottom of this. Because Caleb said it as well. I assume that the person doesn't want to be forcefully talked to. I assume that you don't want to forcibly be talking to this person in order to get what you need. So what's the space that you can find that mediates that problem? So, Nick, did you have any questions? Notes. Yeah, I was going to say.
No notes. Let's keep moving.
No notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Then to close out today's episode and today's Blackout segment. I know
we have an actual live question from Ariana that I can handle real quick, and then we can get to that. She asks, what is the main benefit of Dante audio compared to analog that has been used in the last 100 years, or other ways of audio transferring? I don't know if you guys are extremely familiar with Dante. I have a cursory understanding of it. The main sort of advantage with Dante as an audio, it's a system and hardware that allows you to transmit audio over networking equipment effectively. The main downside with audio over traditional analog systems is signal loss and interference. Even storing like power cables, everybody's familiar with 60-degree hum. Power cables next to signal cables, you get issues with there. Plugging things into a Dante system and digitizing it, being able to send things over Ethernet potentially. I know at Grand Rapids First we use this to send audio and signals over to a completely separate building on the other side of the lot. So for very long runs and whatnot, it's great. And another big advantage is that most churches of like medium size already have like a decent network system throughout their church. So being able to just plug into a switch and then get audio out the other end instead of having to run a whole other line is great. I know some people swear by analog only, especially in the audio engineering world, and switching to digital, there's some apprehension there. But I mean, the sound system that you have in your sanctuary is not a hi-fi sound system. You're not going to be able to tell the difference. And Dante builds good hardware that, I mean, it is effectively no signal degradation or anything like there. So yeah, if you already have a good networking setup or whatever, it absolutely is a optimal, like efficient way of getting audio signals back and forth.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ariana. Our first ever live Blackout question. This is awesome.
Yes.
We're going to land, as I said, one more question. We're just about out of time. If for some reason you have questions or you want to participate in this kind of element in the future, definitely check it out because we will have a time and segment for this hopefully every episode in the near future as we continue to transition this segment. So last question for today, and maybe Caleb, this might be a question that you could answer quickly as we land the episode. What are some goals that Blackbar has for 2024? Or Nick, you're welcome to as well. I will.
No, you're good. I was my scratching was what was the word you were about to say? Black Heart.
I don't know. I've been playing too much Baldur's Gate with Shadow.
We've got a lot of goals, like Zach alluded to earlier. We had a very big sort of all-day vision meeting, and we threw a bunch of ideas at the wall, and we're excited about some of the stuff that's coming up. In terms of sort of the public-facing stuff, the stuff that you guys are aware of, not just internal things, we've got some new things coming out. We've got new forms of content that are coming out. We're trying to find new ways to serve all of you. Without going into all the details right now, if you are a fan of the old school YouTube Blackbar videos, stay tuned. We've got some content I think you're going to like. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. Make sure to join the Discord. Stay connected so you can hear about that kind of stuff as it comes to be. But yeah, we're all in on Blackbar. And this year we're intentionally working on building space for this ministry and how we can best serve sort of the outward community that we're part of. Client work will always be there. We got to pay the bills. We got to figure that out.
Yeah, you're right about that.
But we are like actively working. I know for me especially, figuring out how I can carve days and hours of my week to doing this kind of stuff, because this is the kind of stuff that gets me excited. This gets all of us excited. So we're working through that right now. So new content coming. Keep your eyes peeled.
Amen.
Well, on that note, Nick, why don't you take us home today as we land out our first ever Blackout segment?
Happy to do so. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on our videos. It's going to help make sure that the algorithm gets these things in front of you more often. And
praise be the algorithm.
Praise be the algorithm. Also, if you want to continue this conversation, we do have a community where we are active in daily. It's our Discord channel. Ariana, you asked a great question. I'm sure you have more. If you want to continue asking questions, this is your personal invitation to come to our Discord and comment in the appropriate audio production channel there. We'll talk more about that. We got other people there, other professionals in this industry who are willing to help out. And it's just a community where people in the church creative world can get together and talk. It's really great. We have different community nights that are coming up. I think next week we're going to have our Minecraft Discord community night will be there.
The Discord's also been totally rebuilt as of last week, so it's way easier to jump in. If you got overwhelmed before, it's a lot easier, and everything's a lot easier. So.
And of course, we're all over there, so if you ever need to reach out for help, or if you just can't figure out this Discord thing, we're all in it. Just find our name, click on it, and send us a message.
And speaking of paying the bills, if you have specific work that you need from us, we are available for hire, and I gotta say we do a pretty good job. So check us out at blk.bar for all of that information, and maybe we can work and make something together.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Excited for what 2024 holds.
2024.
See y'all later.